Morning, folks. I'm going to be off camera and off keyboard today as I'm getting ready for a keynote. But happy to still be able to participate.
Hello.
And we have more LFers than others. Oh, well, that changed, huh?
Spoke too soon.
Black cards.
Everyone could mark your attendance. That'd be super groovy. We'll wait a few minutes to gather a TAC quorum and we'll get started.
When you're training the bathroom to do the bathroom,
We have two exciting presentations today and then a full docket of other items to talk about. We have 4 of our 7 TAC members here. Is that correct? Am I counting correctly? All right, so I believe we have quorum. Can I ask, is there a volunteer to help us take notes today? A very vital role for the foundation and our members. There's Mr. Cowway. Look at that. We have 5. So do we have a volunteer that would help us scribe?
Yeah, I'll give it a bash.
Awesome. Thank you, Jacques. I appreciate that. All right. Well, folks, we will get started. Welcome to the June 13th edition of the OpenSSF's Technical Advisory Committee call. We do have quorum today with 5 members present so far. A quick question for the TAC. We had an email from our friends over in the Supply Chain Integrity Working Group, and they have put together a fancy document outlining their 2023 desired priorities and direction. So I was curious, would we like to invite them in to like the next call to talk about that? Or do we want to extend their time? They are already slated to come in and do a working group report. We could just extend their time. So what does the TAC prefer around that? Don't everybody talk at once.
I would say just extend their time.
Any other thoughts?
Fine with me.
I have no strong preference either way.
Awesome. All right. Well, I will extend their time as they come in, and I will let those folks know. They have a really nice document, so I would encourage the TAC to review that ahead of time so we can have a very fruitful conversation on the 11th. All right. Today we have two groups presenting, giving us an update of status. The identifying security threats. I see Mr. Scovetta here, and then we have securing critical projects with Amir. And let's see if Jeff was on. So great, gentlemen, Mr. Scovetta, why don't you take it away? You're first to others, Jeff.
Sounds good. For some reason I thought I was second, so we're just gonna make this work. So hi everybody, Mike Scovetta. Jennifer Furnick is listed as a co-lead. She hasn't been involved in the working group in a very long time. She's awesome. Would love to have her back, but I'm not sure where that source is coming from. So as a takeaway, we should update that source. So identifying security threats. Again, our mission is to give stakeholders informed confidence in the security of the open source in the ecosystem by collecting data and providing it back out. We're an active working group. We meet twice a month, 8 to 10 people each month. We do have multiple active projects going on. The metrics dashboard is the one that is currently moving the fastest with separate meetings each week going on, led by Jay. So with that, the purpose of the metrics dashboard is to replace and be better than the proof of concept one that's been out there for an embarrassingly long time. But this is metrics.openssf.org. Purpose is to provide enough information to consumers of open source so that they understand, what they're getting into. Both developers, engineering teams who need to aggregate the stuff, and engineering management that wants to look at an org level view. So as I mentioned, Jay and a bunch of others are working on this actively. There is code, there is some front end work. They are scheduled to demo later next. I thought it was this month, but it's probably July at this point, where we will see a demo. We don't actually need help at this time, but at some point there will be a funding question because collecting all this data is more than a trivial amount of compute needed. So there's active discussions going on with LFX and other things to figure out what's going on there. So more to come there. Threats, risks, and mitigations. This is the paper that we wrote back in 2020, I believe. The world has changed slightly since 2020, so we're thinking about whether or not we should update this. Luigi's kind of taking the reins on this. If we do a major revision, it would be really nice to have it all branded nice and pretty as OpenSSF. So having creative services do their thing and publish this out as kind of a major kind of rev, I think makes sense. It is still pretty cited, in terms of a comprehensive view of like, what are all the things that you need to worry about, from like fundamentals. Security Insights is a machine readable spec for communicating security metadata. For example, this project is bug fixes and critical patches only. I do static analysis myself, but there's nothing in the repo to indicate it. We've done a threat model. Here is a link to it. Things that like security scorecards wouldn't be able to figure out easily automatically. So it's intended to supplement that. Jeff, your hand is up.
Thank you. Just on the prior slide, you mentioned the paper, and sorry for the delay, but the follow-up question I had on that is that what is the plan to get the paper more noticed or promoted and or more broadly distributed? Because one of the things I think we're continuing to struggle with is not just your working group or this organization But the OpenSSF overall and security, it's a common problem, right? It's like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there.
Yep.
Education is the thing that I think will do the most to move the needle.
I think I'm so to answer your question, like if we like go down the path of like updating it, will probably take a couple months to get it in 2023, 2024 shape. And creative services does its thing and makes it all pretty nice. Having, obviously like the blog, the OpenSSF blog is a reasonable way of getting things out. But I think there's a more fundamental problem, which is that like every day there's like people jockeying for attention for like new security things. And like this paper in particular, I'm not sure is something that 1 million people need to read in order to be successful. This is for folks that are thinking about this problem, level setting them and making sure that they have a comprehensive understanding of the landscape means that they make better decisions. So really the audience is actually us. So I would count it as a win if, everybody who is, let's say, making decisions or meaningfully like invested in OpenSSF peruse the paper. If we get stuff, readers outside, I think that is amazing, but I wouldn't count that as the only sign of success. Ava.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Echoing Jeff's question, I would imagine that the audience for this includes everyone who leads a security-related effort in other foundations, folks who maintain package repositories like PyPy and NPM, and a lot of large project maintainers, again, outside of our immediate inner circle of the OpenSSF maintainers. Have I missed something? Because it seems like you're saying that's not the audience.
No, sorry. I'm sorry, I'm getting a echo. I don't think that like individual project, obviously I think it's, well, I wrote it, so I think it's like an amazing paper, but I think that individual maintainers, I think, are going to get less from it than folks that are responsible for either broadly the security of an ecosystem or want to see the full left to right view, or so yes, certain maintainers at large projects or foundations or like us in other, in parts of government or whatever, totally makes sense. I think there are probably dozens to hundreds of those people around, and I would love for them to get value out of the paper. I'm not sure that a broad, I'm not pushing back, like we want to make it a broad thing and lots of readers, that's wonderful. But I think that the having a more targeted audience maybe, and maybe we just need to think about that hard, because I just kind of made up the answer on the spot.
When this comes back up, I think you're asking for creative support. I would also want to push this in front of marketing and outreach to figure out not how to get in front of 1 million eyes, but how to get in front of the right 1,000 eyeballs.
That sounds awesome. We'll do.
Great.
Okay, security insights. So again, so this is a spec. It's a YAML spec. Luigi leads this work. As I said, I do these things out of band that you can't discover just from looking at my repo, but they are security relevant. So this has been out there for a while. It hasn't had a ton of uptake, particularly in OpenSSF. So we really would like us to like dog food this ourselves, push for this, either as an org level security policy where this gets pushed down to repos, or just pull requests and actually gather like feedback. And if this provides value, if it doesn't provide value, we'd like to know either way. Silence is kind of the worst. So that's where that one's going. Security reviews. This has been out there for a couple of years. This is a repo of security reviews conducted against open source packages. So, things that we've done, things that other organizations have done, usually we just link to it. But it's intended to be a one-stop shop of, hey, does anybody know anything about NPM left pad? Oh, here's a review. Joe did it, and here's what he said. It doesn't. There's a whole bunch of like hand wavy caveats on like there's no guarantees and things like that. We're looking to see what it's already integrated into the current proof of concept dashboard. We probably want to continue that integration for the new one. When Alpha Omega, as we scan and review things, we would like to somehow get that into here. We're trying to think about what makes sense there. And we actually just want it to be used more because we think it's a valuable resource. We don't need any particular help from TAC at this point. It's just the amount of energy units we have in moving things forward, and it's a little slow going at this point. I think this is the last one. Disclosure check is a tool that we wrote for to help AO, and I wrote it, so I'm not even sure what circle I'm in right now, but the purpose of this is to identify the best way to privately disclose a vulnerability to a package maintainer, meaning it'll parse out security MD, it'll look for like emails in commits or package metadata or tide lift or like whatever it can find, and gives you a ranked list of here's the best way to report it privately. The purpose is for AO to use this when we are doing automated disclosure to find the top ways of reporting and doing it that way. We have a little bit of cleanup stuff. This is moved into the OSSF / disclosure - check repo. Bug fixes, better docs. I would like to get get a blog post out, because I think this is a good general use tool that anybody can use. Anybody doing this stuff at scale or even not at scale could benefit by this. But I do plan to home this in AO as opposed to the working group. So I probably won't come back here for this working group to talk about this. But if there's anyone that knows anyone that would like to maintain this, like this is like kind of an interesting tool that I would think someone would like to drive. But if not, we will continue it ourselves. Sorry, one more slide.
And we are past time. If you could.
Damn it. Okay, I'm gonna skip this one because this is really more AO. The only question I have for TAC: are there things that we should be thinking about that we are not? If so, please engage. We really would like feedback from outside of our working group to see the things that are important to us. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
As folks have questions, please type them into the chat. We'll try to address them there and in the meeting notes. And let's move on to Amir with his presentation.
Oh, thank you, everybody. And I just want to thank Jeff for also being here today to present to you. I think I will share my screen then. I did receive that the June 2023 TAC update slideshow. So I will go ahead and share that one up. I have to do this first. Do this and let me make this go. How do you hide this?
You hit slideshow, it'll go full screen.
There you go. Okay, thank you.
That button on the top right. We'll do it, all that too.
All right. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. So I'll start us off with our new updates. So we're really excited to announce that after a couple months of curation, discussion within the working group, we did finish our second iteration of the set of identified critical projects. We have a link to the Roth document there. I'm very happy about that. Thank you to everyone who participated in the many lively discussions we had about this. So very excited to share that with you all. Next steps on that are to prepare the step for publishing or to announce in some way to promote this this set that we came up with, as well as developing a system for accepting feedback and suggestions. So this will tie into our ask of the TAC as well in thinking about how to go about this, because we do want it to be a very community driven, community curated process. So it's not just, for example, Jeff and myself, populating or identifying sets of critical projects. It's more of a community driven effort. And another new update from Associated Efforts, OSTIF, Open Source Technology Improvement Fund, last month, and in late April, published results for 3 security audits of Simple JSON, libcat, and C-Aries. And these were funded or sponsored by Amazon Web Services. So thank you very much to them for that. Yes, so with the set of critical projects, this came up a number of times throughout the exercise of getting to a V1.1 and iterating on that first set that we had of, what is the purpose of this? Why do we care about this? And I think it came up in a number of times as we were doing it. So we thought to kind of help to be more efficient, just kind of writing down what we thought the purpose of this, or we think the purpose of this set of critical projects is. Feedback on this, the wording and the messaging is certainly welcome from the TAC and everyone else. And then, yes, current status, finished version 1.1. And then next, as I mentioned in the last slide, preparing for announcing and publishing that, as well as developing and implementing a system for accepting feedback and suggestions, which brings me into the, what help we could use from the TAC is just any thoughts or insight on how to best curate and further analyze this set. As I mentioned, we would like to do it in a way that obviously does require a manual element, that requires a community-driven curation element, but also in a way where, again, it doesn't just fall on, for example, Jeff and myself to come up with critical projects to recommend for the work. So if any thoughts immediately come up, some context we have talked about, and I think we even have some preliminary work done. I know Randall's been working on it, of doing certain, of porting this really to GitHub and using GitHub either for, to do that kind of curation piece and that nomination piece and the feedback piece. But yeah, any thoughts on from the TAC would be greatly appreciated here. If there are other things that we can maybe draw from, other types of similar structured efforts where we can maybe draw from influence from, that would be very helpful. Okay, so next I will pass it on to Jeff for All-Star updates.
Sure. Yeah, so no major updates with All-Star, just fixing bugs with production, adding features, cutting releases, that kind of stuff. This is a tool for administering GitHub organizations. So I noticed that there's been some recent efforts on, formalizing the administration of the OpenSSF org. So if there's any help that we could do on automation there, let us know. Happy to chat. Next slide. Criticality score, same thing, kind of more development, V2, and then struggling with GitHub rate limits there. And yeah, criticality score continues to be a very useful metric for us when we determine the critical projects. Next slide. And then package analysis is no updates here, but we wanted to include a slide, make sure that you all know all of our projects. Continue on. Yeah, so jumping back on the, wrapping up the update. Again, well, yeah. So one that we've covered is thoughts on like how to do the set. But another thing that we saw when we were doing a lot of the work on the set is, we come and meet twice a month, and a lot of the members kind of don't know how we fit into the rest of the OpenSSF. So they really want to see, how is this being used? I come up with, there's Alpha Omega, there's the thing that we did a couple of years ago with the Great MFA project. But we want, our community members want to also see how it fits in with the greater OpenSSF. So we're looking to we have some ideas ourselves of doing like a road show now that we have a new version for all the other working groups to, say, here it is, how can this help you out? But if there's any kind of communication the TAC can help with on letting everybody know that we do have, like if they're hearing something about somebody's doing, wants to target the top projects, let them know that we've got this set. And that we can use it, and that, connect the dots there so that we can get any new requirements or feedback on the set to help us with the next iteration. Back to you, Amir. Anything you want to add there?
No, I don't believe so. Yeah, that really is kind of the main thing is, I think you brought up a great point of how it fits with other efforts, how it can be used. I know for a fact that, we can use this data for determining which projects could use, third-party help, independent security audits, stuff like that. And then as well as the thought on essentially continue how to best manage and curate this set, because, because I think that ties into kind of the issue itself, is that, because this can be used in a lot of ways, I think that should be factored into how we kind of manage and curate this set. So I would definitely love some feedback there.
We'll have a few moments for questions. Does anyone have anything for Jeff or Amir? Zach.
Yes, I was thinking we've often been talking about the marketing and the OpenSSF looking for blog posts. That could be a really good way to get the word out about this list of critical projects and engage people both inside and outside of the OpenSSF.
Arnaud?
Yeah, first I'm all for, eating our own dog food. So following up to what Michael was saying earlier as well, I think we should definitely try to leverage those tools for ourselves and show best in class, because otherwise, if we don't live by our own gospel, then it kind of weakens the whole premise. But on the set of critical projects, I wanted to know, have you guys reached out to all these different projects maintainers? Do they know that they're on this list? Because I was part of the MFA distribution project, and I was baffled that, when I reached out to some of these people, they're like, what? I'm on what list? And it was a bit embarrassing.
Short answer, no. Yeah.
Question, yeah.
We make the list, and then again, like we don't say like what to do with it. This is, to fuel other efforts.
As part of this, there hasn't been an element to actually contact the project maintainers. I could definitely see that as maybe a potential logical next step. But as far as what we've currently done, it's been about more being able to justify the projects themselves to warrant being on this set of projects.
Pardon me?
I was just saying that, as it currently stands, it's just been more about getting people or getting projects identified. David E.
Yeah, exactly. Again, been participating on this with Amir and Jeff and Jacques, and so thanks very much to me and David Wheeler and many others who've come in various times. So thanks very much for this great work in creating this set. I mean, exactly, Arnaud, as you were asking about, one of the issues is that we've created this, and it's been the initial list of projects was proposed in multiple different ways. I mean, some of this was individuals nominating, some of this was sort of semi-automated and looking for large numbers of stars and projects and GitHub. So there's been a lot of different ways in which we've tried to get that initial list, which is somewhat arbitrary. And again, it's this list of group of people that have been that I mentioned that are on this list, asking about trying to fathom humanly about what are the critical projects in some consistent way. But exactly as Amir mentioned, the question is, how do we take this information and include this in a broader pipeline for OpenSSF and make this consistent in, okay, we have this list, and I completely agree with you, Arno, publicizing it. But additionally to publicizing to these teams, part of it is, okay, we publicize it, but we don't have, other than, okay, we created this list and it's a list, we as the securing critical projects and as the OpenSSF in general, the TAC, don't have a broader arc or story about what this information is going to be used for. So yes, we can go to a project and say you're on the list. It's like, okay, that and $5 will get you a latte at Starbucks, or maybe it's 10 now or whatever. But it's like, okay, right. So okay, you're on the list. Congratulations. Next. So, I mean, part of this question, and I think that Amir brought up is, okay, how can we, with the TAC, actually create a pipeline and be able to utilize this? Okay, we created this information, and we've also were in coordination with Alpha Omega. They have their 10,000 projects, and maybe about our group sort of owning that. But how does this be, trying to create a broader pipeline for this information, a consumer, and also understanding better for this group of who are the potential upstream consumers of this, and what would be more useful, how can they consume what we've already created, and what would be more useful information for them to consume? How can we better curate this list or create a better, so that there's sort of a holistic sense of all these individual SIGs that originally populated the OpenSSF, and now that we've got this broader organization, and how can we have a more consistent messaging and method for how all this information is going to be consumed and utilized within the organization and the various SIGs, as opposed to our creating this list and then somebody else who needs to, again, Alpha Omega, fund organizations, but they create their own lists. So, I mean, there's right now, how is this all going to work? And so Arno's question is really apropos of, the broader question is, how do we utilize this?
I want to thank Amir and Jeff for coming and talking, and thank you to Michael. To wrap this particular conversation up, I see two outcomes that we can directly address the ask from both groups. Omkar is starting to kind of document what his vision and kind of what our kind of marching orders are going to be for the foundation in the next year. So I think we definitely need to include things like the critical projects list, and considering things that need to be done like at a foundation level, like everyone having a security MD, yada, yada, yada. So I think there's definitely opportunity for us to work. And specifically, I think we should make an issue either in the TAC or in the critical list repo, so we don't lose track of this, and start a dialogue between the TAC and the team working on the list to see, kind of brainstorming ideas of how we might be able to socialize this, get this better penetrated throughout the organization, and kind of start to make some plans. And then eventually let's set up a call or a series of calls to start to formulate the plan to take action on how we can start to leverage this great work. Again, thank you to our speakers today. I really appreciate that. Let us move.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Coben, everybody. I just wanted to quickly also address Ava's question.
Please.
So it is currently public or open to access this set of projects. In terms of any external orgs relying on it today, I don't know of any, I would say, specific examples. But I do know, for example, us at OSTIF, are using data points like this to when folks ask us, hey, what projects what projects should we go out and audit, we can point to some kind of data, or not just some kind of data, but multiple data points, and this being one of them. So we're hoping, at least that's kind of how I'm seeing it, as well as it's not necessarily meant to be a prescriptive thing. It's something that people will build insight off of or feed into kind of their analyses. So yeah, I don't want to take up any more time, but I do see Jacques' hand is up, and then I think I'm done with our updates. So thanks again, everyone.
And very quickly, while the US government is probably not looking at it now, the SOSA legislation, if it gets passed, requires CISA to build basically the same thing. And I will not be surprised if they show up and do a copy and paste to get started. So indirectly, I think we'll have an impact there.
Excellent. Good observation, Jack. I will ask my friends from the OpenSSF staff. I think it's Jennifer, put a note about OpenSSF Day EU.
Yep, I did. I dropped that in there. If you would like to speak at OpenSSF Day in Bilbao later this year, please submit to the CFP that's open now, and let everyone know within your working groups and colleagues who might want to submit. And then I'll just mention one other comment, that we're here for you in terms of marketing comms support. So whenever there's something that needs to be shared broadly or to specific audiences, I'm here to support. So just let me know and I can work with you on that.
Awesome. Any questions about EU OpenSSF Day? I encourage everyone to submit. And I hear that the city itself is quite beautiful to visit. Not that that goes into travel budgets at all. Let us move on to the issues we slated to talk about today. Let's talk about TAC issue 172. Michael put together a very well put together thing for us to review about guac, and I will yield the floor to Michael. You have about 10 minutes, sir.
Sure. So we're looking to, and by we, I mean the guac maintainers, are looking to contribute guac to the OpenSSF if you'll have us. I hopefully filled out the application correctly. I know there was, we have some open questions about what the due diligence actually is on that front, and we're prepared to run through any process on that end. But I think beyond that, I hope we filled out the application correctly. We're interested in contributing guac. We think based on some conversations with both the end user group as well as the supply chain integrity group and some other folks within the OpenSSF we've been chatting with about guac and demoing to guac. We believe it might be a good fit for OpenSSF. And I know, at least right now, according to the governance, we come to here first to sort of submit the application, and then we go to the actual individual working groups if it fits under there. But we have had some conversations with the supply chain integrity group that did sort of say, it sounded like there was some interest on that front, that if we did get accepted, that they might be interested in having us fall under there. For folks who are not super aware, so guac is and we've given a couple of demos on it, and they're all up on the YouTube and on the OpenSSF YouTube. But we've been developing it for about the past, give or take. So it started actually around this time. We sat down with some folks, a bunch of us between Kusari, Google, Purdue University, City, and some other folks went and sat down and sort of sketched out some stuff. We've been writing the code more or less since summer of last year. And we've had a release of like a v0.1 beta release. Guac is sort of intended to be a knowledge graph of where we ingest stuff like SBOMs and OSV and deps.dev and all sorts of other metadata, salsa attestations, and all that sort of stuff to sort of help give folks a better understanding of their supply chain, while also sort of still associating that data with the sort of like where it came from and that sort of stuff, so that you have an idea of who's making sort of claims about the different pieces on your supply chain. It's intended to be a supply chain sort of knowledge graph, and hopefully useful to folks from the perspective of like helping actually dive in and figure out, okay, hey, I have all these SBOMs, I have all these salsa attestations, what do I do with them? How can I build a better understanding of my supply chain? Well, we can ingest all that data and you can run queries, use it as the basis for policy and all that good stuff. And so on that front as well, we've been, working with a lot of folks within the community. So we have folks like from Red Hat and Guidewire and Yahoo, and there's a hedge fund that's also been looking at it. And also we have, in a couple of the community meetings, there's actually a law firm that seemed interested in Guac, because we're also keeping track of license information, and they seemed interested in taking a look at that as well. So that's just the quick explanation of Guac, but I wanted to open it up to questions.
All right, friends, I'll start off. So from your perspective, how it feels like this would probably land in the supply chain integrity group. Looking at the existing projects within there, how do you see Guac complementing or adding value to things like Salsa and S2C2F?
Sure. Yeah. So in a couple of ways. One is, so we ingest Salsa metadata. So one of the things is and we've sort of built out a couple of POCs for this as well, but we can sort of ingest Salsa metadata to help sort of sort out whether or not, does this be able to hit those high level questions like, does this package have a Salsa attestation? If yes, what is the information we can glean out of that Salsa attestation? Did it come from, a source that we trust, and so on? And then in addition to that, when it comes to sort of the S2C2F stuff, so that's kind of more on the consumption end. And so we would sort of assume that, like, if you're trying to do S2C2F, you could use Salsa metadata, you could use the metadata that's coming out of Guac, like SBOMs, all this other stuff, to help you sort of determine, like, am I doing the right things from the S2C2F standpoint? And then, when we look at something like Fresca, right, you can have like a build, and that build is generating your SBOMs and Salsa and all sorts of other metadata that can then easily be ingested right into Guac. So that's kind of how we see it. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Arnaud.
Yeah, so I have actually two questions. The first one is, if I understand this correctly, there is two parts to this. There is the actual piece of software you guys develop, but there's also an instance. So it's a bit similar to what we have with Sixstore. And what you're contributing, I assume, is the software part, but I wonder what happens with the instance.
Yeah, so there's still discussion on what exactly that instance would look like, but there is some folks, especially on the Google side, that seem to be interested in and we're interested as well, as like creating something like a public Guac service for like the top 1% or so of, let's say, open source packages, to help folks get a better understanding of what relies on what and stuff that kind of goes above and beyond the SBOM. So we're, there's some interest there to kind of create a public service on that front. And it would kind of, be similar to something like DevStop Devs, OSV, and Sixstore and that kind of thing. But currently there's nothing that exists yet.
Right. No, but that's okay. Thanks. And so my other question, we heard from Michael earlier that they are working on this dashboard to alert developers that, oh, watch out, you're adding a dependency that may have that level of security, posture. And so there seems to be some kind of connection there. There should be. Is there any talks about this? Is my question.
So no, there hasn't been, but I think great minds think alike, I guess. I think that this sort of thing, when we look at also stuff like the thing formerly known as Sterling Toolchain and everything else, there's a lot of folks who are looking at like, hey, now that we are generating all this supply chain metadata, what do we do with it? How do we analyze it? And how do we actually make decisions based on it? And so if there is a dashboard on that front and that we can integrate with, that would be great, especially if those folks are better front-end developers than us back-end folks. Because it's a dashboard only a mother can love.
Yeah, it's okay. We agree. There's at least, it's worth investigating.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
Dan.
My ears perked up when I heard about running a Guac service similar to deps.dev. One of the things that have been talking to various people in OpenSSF about data licensing and the fact that so I would just encourage you to think about data licensing at the beginning of that project rather than everybody else who seems to have forgotten about it and isn't interested in talking about it, but I'm interested in talking about it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep talking about it. Data licensing is important. Please think about it at the beginning. Thank you.
Yes. So on that front, we are very, actually that was one of the key design things in our design doc, both from a data licensing perspective as well as a PII perspective. We want to not have to get into PII sorts of situation where we're ingesting data. We also don't from a safety perspective, we don't want to potentially be ingesting data that and doing analysis that could give folks unmask anonymous folks. We don't want to do any of that as well. And so that's definitely a key thing that's important for us.
That's important. I was also talking about the outward licensing. So if you expose a data set through an API, make sure you clearly signpost what the data license is, for instance, CC0, so that people know that they can use it, right? Because this is becoming a problem. It's a separate issue, but it's something that I've been talking to folks, for instance, about the scorecard API about.
Cool.
Jacques.
Related to that is the license of the incoming documents. It only just occurred to me as a potential nightmare. I guess one of the things in Guac, though, is the design is that it explicitly has a relatively subjective, it has a concept of the subject who is testing. So we can probably attach to that this person has granted a license.
Yeah, and so on that front, right now we're keeping track of the source, where it came from, as well as it's in the works to use stuff who signed this, or rather not necessarily literally who signed it, but more just, hey, there is this key signed it, or this SIG store, and it can be backed by this OIDC or whatever. I think that there's stuff on that front that we're interested in exploring a bit more.
You can at least, just going into the details briefly, you can at least make it a condition of entry for incoming documents that they adhere to a particular license.
Yes,
for the public instance, at least. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, and that I think is something that we're interested in. Actually, that's something that I know a bunch of different groups have begun to discuss. And it's slightly tangential to this, but real quick, is just a lot of folks are starting to ask the question of, great, distribution of supply chain metadata. So if Guac is ingesting all this stuff, how are folks actually still distributing it from their package PyPI, gem, npm? I know different folks are doing different things, but I think there's stuff on that front that I think a lot of folks are very interested in figuring out how to help the community solve.
So to my friends on the TAC, do we have any other questions? How do we feel about the proposal to incubate guac, so we can have some, incubate those avocados? Ava.
As a project and a code base, I think it's incredibly useful. I've been following their work from a distance for a while. If it went to a vote to move to Sandbox, I would absolutely thumbs up it. For incubation, I would discuss a little more. The public service aspect of it, I think, needs much deeper consideration before we approve that one.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from the TAC?
I'm also in favor. I just wanted to point out, unfortunately, we have a process which is not followed. There's a technicality. We can talk about it later. But Mike, you need to create a PR. If you go to the process section of the TAC project lifecycle, there are instructions on how to do this.
Thank you, Arno. Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I only saw the one thing that said
It's
create an
all right.
issue. I must have missed the PR piece.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's also a part of that is like legal review, like an IP transfer type review assessment that needs to be conducted. Zach and then Bob.
I agree with Ava on the delineation between the project and the service, and also that I think that this is a great candidate for Sandbox. I want to apologize on the messiness of the process. We're working on cleaning it up. And in that theme, I was wondering, do we need a specific TAC sponsor for this to move forward? Or like, what else does this need in order to move forward?
We would need a TAC sponsor, yes. Bob.
Yeah, so +1 to Ava's comment. I think the other +1 as well from Zach and Arno. I'm happy to be the TAC sponsor as well.
Excellent. I also agree there's a lot of value in continuing to explore this. Any other, I think, Dustin, any thoughts from you, sir?
I'm in favor.
All right. So let us mark down that the TAC is agreeable to the idea of moving this in. There are some procedural things we need to do, the PR and whatnot. And Mr. Calloway has generously agreed to help shepherd you and provide you his sage wisdom as we move forward. So let's get that documented in the issue and get the PR set. And we look forward to continuing to explore this idea. And to Ava's statement, let's see if we can get some more details around the potential public service. I think that would also be useful to get described and start to think through, because there will be a cost to that. Any other thoughts or statements for the TAC or the observers? Great.
Oh, the only thing is just, yeah, I just posted in chat, but yeah, if somebody can just point me to the instructions for the PR stuff, I'll work on that right after this.
Excellent. Well, not right after this, because we have a
Sterling,
to work on. All right. Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing more good stuff from Guac. Let us talk in our last 9 minutes about the contributor ladder. We had some dialogue here on the issue. Does anyone wish to kind of report out status and share with the group where we are with that? Dustin.
Yeah, I think I can do that. So yeah, we have some folks who are interested in becoming maintainers of Scorecard. And there was a request by Justin Augustus a couple, over a year ago now, for a contributor ladder, because the process is somewhat undefined of like, what do you need to do? At what point do we make someone a maintainer, give them the commit bit, that kind of thing. In that process, contributor ladder is drafted, which is mostly derived from the SigStore contributor ladder, which already exists. And the thought was, well, like maybe it makes sense for all OpenSSF projects to have contributor ladders in order to make sure that all projects sort of have a path towards maintainership. I think that if I can try to summarize the discussion, is generally there's a lot of detail in there. There's a lot of detail in the SigStore ladder. It might be too much as a template for kind of nascent projects to have to adopt. I think we could mitigate this by making it very clear that this is just a suggestion or a template, but we could also tone it down, and we could also not provide a template and just sort of say, here's some examples of other projects in OpenSSF that have ladders. That's kind of my general thoughts, but interested to hear from others as well.
We will open that up. Thank you for that summary. What thoughts or questions do we have? I will say, as a working group lead, having a template would be super useful, because we get lots of questions from members of how do I participate, and kind of if there's ever comes to a vote, it's nice to have kind of that process laid down. So I wouldn't mind a template. Let's start with Arnaud.
So Dustin and I had discussed it quite a bit on the issue, but to repeat a little bit, I mean, where I stand is, I think there is value in doing this, but we need to make it, the minimal requirement needs to be very minimal, because, I mean, you're talking about template. I agree, a template is very useful, but for instance, we had a template for working groups that has a TSC, when most working groups don't need a TSC. But because it's in the template, everybody has a TSC in the charter, which they don't really know what to do with. And I don't want to have that situation here. I think it's critical to document who the maintainers are and how somebody becomes a maintainer. That should definitely be, we should be transparent about this. And I think there's value in having a standard policy across the organization. But all the different layers that are being talked about, the different roles, seem to be a bit overwhelming to me. And my concern is that we make it so complicated that, somebody who wants to contribute, look into it and they're like, oh my God, forget it. There's just too many, hurdles to get to maintainer. I'm not going to bother. So we have to find the right way to present it so that, we keep the simple.
Bob, our newest sponsor.
Yeah. I guess my short comment on this is I am in total favor of mandating that projects within the foundation need to have a ladder so that it's very clear that how a contributor can move to a maintainer. I would simply just go to Dustin's earlier point of linking to some examples. I think the template thing can be overwhelming, and I think let's not let perfect be the enemy of good enough here. But I think as part of a mature organization, I think making sure that folks think about that very early on is a very important dynamic for inclusive communities.
Excellent points. Thank you, Bob. Any additional comments on this? All right, so we haven't resolved this, so I expect we'll come back at a future date. Maybe if we can continue the conversation, if we need to schedule any kind of working group session to kind of have some real-time conversation. But I would ask that we come back at some point in the future with the results and kind of recommendations from how we want to see this play out and get implemented. Does that sound fair? All right. We are out of time, so we will not be able to get to the taxonomy. So maybe next time we'll start off after our working group update with the taxonomy. And if anyone has any updates, please communicate as part of the issue. We're trying to get these documented so we can have that transparent dialogue. Zach.
Yeah, my 1 minute plea is please read the issue. Please read the linked Google Doc. I might try to spend some time between now and the next TAC meeting putting together a more concrete proposal. If that's something you're interested in, please reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, team. I appreciate everyone that contributed, whether presentations or conversation today. Good talk. Looking forward to seeing our newest potential adoption of Guac, watching that ripen. Thank you all. Enjoy your days. And if anyone's interested in the security tool belt, we'll be talking about that in just a few minutes. Cheers all.
Thank you.